Hello and welcome to the program. I'm your host, Neal Howard. Thank you for joining us here on this Health Suppliers segment here on Health Professional Radio. I'm talking today with Dr. Sharad Paul, evolutionary biologist and author of the book entitled The Genetics of Health. And he's here with us to talk about how genetics affect our health, wellness, and even how we can respond to treatment of illnesses on a genetic level. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Dr. Paul.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
Great. Thanks for coming. You're an evolutionary biologist. Talk a little bit about your background and how you came to be an evolutionary biologist.
It's quite interesting because, first of all, I think, like you said, I'm a skin cancer specialist. And one thing with skin is it's our only universal organ. So all creatures have skin. We have many animals which have no brains or hearts, but everyone's got skin. Mm-hmm. So I guess in studying the origins of skin, one of my previous books was actually called Skin, a Biography. And so I was really, so that was the first reason I got interested in the origins of skin and evolutionary biology behind skin to start off with. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I actually am also asked to operate on animals. So often, whenever animals get skin tumors, I've operated a lot of primates and lemurs and orangutans and things. So I guess, in studying their skin conditions and human conditions and seeing the links between them and how skin has evolved, I guess over time it's become another interest.
Now, you've authored a book due out this month, as a matter of fact, called The Genetics of Health. Why did you write a book and titled it The Genetics of Health?
I think it was really an extension of looking at how our genes shape our own lifestyles as well as how our lifestyles shape our genes. Mm-hmm. So what I was looking at, going back on this evolutionary biology, as we know, over 50,000 years as humankind has migrated all across the planet and adopted different diets, we've all not only activated and expressed new genes, but also, and sometimes because of our lifestyles past, we've actually inherited them. So, for example, in Asia, a lot of people were hunter-gatherers. There was very little dairy farming, so there are automatically more Asians who are lactose intolerant than Europeans. I mean, that's a simple example, and also if you look at the origins, while we're on lactose, for example, you can find that when there was a famine in Europe, that was a time for a mutation where people began to be able to digest milk because those who couldn't digest milk, and it was the first time people turned to milk in desperation, they actually died. So really, these things shaped what humans did, but another way of looking at it also continued to shape our bodies. And really, the basic reason why I first got interested in it is because if you think about it, one cannot have good skin and bad health. Absolutely. So really, I was looking at In your practice,
yes. I mean, the skin, it's everywhere, as you say, on our body. Are there different types of skin cancer, or is it basically the same, just in a different location on the body?
Yes, I mean, there are many different types of skin cancers. The most common one is, of course, what we call the basal cell skin cancers. And the most lethal ones are what we hear more about, which we call melanomas, which is actually a tumor of melanin-producing cells, the cells which give us skin color. Everything in the body is to do with environment and genetics. And in some ways, like certain tumors, you have a genetic predisposition, but you also will have an environmental factor. So for skin cancer, the major factor is, of course, sunlight or sunburn. And one way of looking at it, how you predict how a tumor will look is, so if you think about when somebody goes in the sun, as a defense mechanism, our skin tends to tan. So the corollary of that is that if you were to get a tumor from sunlight, it will automatically be excessively tanned, in other words, dark like melanoma. But we do have many other types of skin cancers, even some not dark like basal cell cancers. We have squamous cell cancers, many other types of tumors. But fundamentally, to a large part, they're related to sun exposure, and of course, a little bit of genetics as well.
You mentioned that people can be genetically predisposed for certain types of cancer, certain types of ailments and things of that nature. Can we also be genetically predisposed for certain diets or exercise? If I don't respond well to weightlifting, it may respond well to distance running or vice versa. Can we find out genetically what is best for us as it pertains to diet and exercise?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, you hit upon my real favorite thing. I've actually developed a 21 gene test which does exactly that. So at the back of my book, The Genetics of Health, there's information on how you can order the test. But fundamentally, one chapter in this book is about eating for your gene type. And there's also a chapter on movement which talks about our gene type and exercise. So absolutely, we can do gene tests which can tell you, are you predisposed to endurance exercise or power exercise, in other words, which will be more beneficial for you. We can also even do little things like, even while you're exercising, we also know there is a strong genetic predisposition for people getting Achilles tendon injuries, for example. So those people, it's more important they have appropriate orthotics and things like that. Absolutely. With regard to diet, there's a whole range of things. There's some people who can eat all the saturated fat they want and not put on weight. For example, there's one of the reasons why the story about why French women don't get fat is when we looked at those populations to a large degree, in addition to them doing things like walking a lot, is very strong. There's the APO2 gene, which we know reduces the risk of obesity when you eat saturated fat. So there is actually a genetic predisposition why certain countries are skinnier than certain countries. And absolutely, one can actually learn to eat for your gene type.
What about genetic predispositions for certain attitudes when it comes to health and wellness, diet and food? Are we genetically predisposed to certain mindsets when it comes to health? Is that a possibility as well?
Oh, absolutely. One chapter in this book is called Sluggish Genes, and we were looking at is laziness and procrastination inherited. And, the funny thing is, one thing I must caution is while we're talking about genetics, genes are our blueprint, but they're not our destiny. So in other words, one can work hard enough and you will overcome any, I suppose it's like saying parents or a bad childhood or whatever, you can always overcome it with your attitude. So I think it's the same with genes to some degree. So I wouldn't necessarily, but having said that, you're right, that when studies were done in procrastination, we know it's a survival gene because in times when there were more predators, the people who were still in the caves refusing to go to take on a saber-tooth tiger because they were still saying, my spear is not sharp enough. These guys survived because they never ended up fighting any battle. Mm-hmm. So they lived to propagate their genes. So it is. We do know that in fact, in this 21 gene test, one of the things I also test for is, it actually automatically shows your motivation to exercise. So funnily enough, we can genetically pick the people who are more likely to need more help with undertaking exercise or going to the gym.
Talk about age as a factor when it comes to skincare. There seems to be, there are some folks that, for lack of a better term, age so gracefully. Their skin seems to be radiant all the time. You find out that they're 70 or even 80 years old, while some of us tend to look a bit older in our 40s and 50s. How much does age play a factor, and can that be predetermined genetically as well?
Yes, although I would say that a large part of it is environmental. So if you look at the three biggest causes why, the single biggest cause of aging is actually photoaging because of sunlight. So in places where people have a lot of sun exposure, their skin obviously ages more. The second factor is, of course, smoking. So another kind of industrial exposure to toxins. And the third, because the skin is just an envelope which protects us, so it's actually constantly exposed to the environment. And the third thing is, interestingly, stress levels, because we know that stress, be it emotional stress or physical stress like injury or illness, also affects your skin because it stimulates the same molecular pathways. So I think if you ask, the three S's would be, reducing stress, reducing sun exposure, and not smoking would be, the three most important things you can do if you want to look younger, other than seeing a skin specialist like me. I was kidding about the last one.
And where can our listeners get more information about you, Doctor?
Oh, they can just go to my website, just sharadpaul.com, and they can also get in touch if they wish to.
Thank you so much. Our guest in studio today is Dr. Sharad Paul, skin cancer surgeon, skincare expert, and evolutionary biologist. Also the author of the soon-to-be-released book, The Genetics of Health, available, published through Simon & Schuster, available April of this year, 2017. Transcripts and audio of this program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au and also at hpr.fm. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, listen in, and download at SoundCloud.